Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first Lawyer Growth Seminar. Today, I have with me my panelists that I'd like to do quick introductions on. Each of these people on this seminar have a decade or more experience in legal marketing and working with law firms. So we'll just run down a quick list and I'll have Colleen introduce herself first.
Hey guys, I'm Colleen. I'm the CEO over at lawyer.com, and I'm excited to be a panelist and learn and grow with you guys.
And then Megan.
Hi, everybody. Megan Braverman, principal and owner of Berbay Marketing and PR. We are a marketing and PR agency that specializes in working with law firms, and we create the visibility and credibility that fuels revenue growth.
And then Brian.
With Inbounds, our company sells leads to marketing companies. We're also looking to diversify and go directly to law firms.
And I'm Eric Bersano with Market My Market. We do digital marketing, SEO, web development for law firms. So now that we've got the introductions out of the way, what we've really planned for you is hopefully a very concise overview of what we see the market at right now. And this is to grow your law firm. So some of the challenges that I think that we're all seeing right now is there's more diversified ways for your potential clients to find you. You know, when I started around the same time Brian did in legal marketing, people were still using the yellow pages. And then they quickly went to online and some paid search. And now there's social media. There's all different types of ways for people to find you. So we want to try to talk about the complexities of that and whether you've got a really limited budget or a large budget of where that could be best focused to help your firm. The inefficiencies that some law firms are experiencing. And what I mean by that is, 20 years ago, you didn't have access to the same tools that you have today. It's getting a lot more competitive in the landscape because you've got some of these, what we'll call big box competitors like the Morgan and Morgans of the world who have massive budgets. So how do you compete with them in your local market? So I'll start with the first topic. We'll cover some marketing and PR, and to put Colleen on the hot seat, since she was first to introduce herself, maybe some of the things that you're seeing that you can share with the audience.
Sure. So it's a crazy slogan that I heard, and I didn't understand it at first, but competition is the new collaboration. And we're seeing this more and more where firms are friendly and they're teaming up together to reach a broader audience. As you mentioned, it is very difficult in the legal marketing industry right now. It's one of the most expensive industries to be in. And aren't we all so lucky? But really, how can we creatively do something different? And I think a very interesting way to do that is to team up with somebody else who complements your law firm and go together as a group to market. And that's kind of this new competition is the new collaboration theme.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm wondering, so if you're a personal injury firm, you're probably not going to team up with another personal injury firm, but an estate planning firm or a family law firm, and really helping each other out to, collaborate on whether you're doing a newsletter together or maybe a
Sure.
personalized event or maybe a charity together where you can share costs. And then if clients come in, each of the firms gets the firms in their practice area.
Sure. Or like you were saying, even with personal injury, maybe you have your own niche, right? We've talked about that. As a law firm, you want to have a niche so that you can set yourself apart. Maybe you are West Coast driven, but you need that East Coast arm and you're not ready to be a nationwide firm. Try to see if you can't kind of fill the gaps and put the pieces together.
Yeah, I'll add to that in that we've seen a lot of PI firms partner together, right? So, for example, one PI firm in the example that Colleen gave in terms of geographic differences, there are some PI firms that just have, they're more of an influencer on social media. And so they've really got the social media down pat, whereas the other firm has more the digital footprint. And so they'll team up together to get the social stuff and you get the digital stuff. They collaborate a lot. We've seen a lot of collaboration with really the same types of firms, and not just two, but three, four, five.
Well,
Brian, how about you? Have you seen any of the collaboration of law firms, whether they're in one practice area or in different practice areas?
No, doesn't mean it's not possible. I have seen that for mass torso where people will something nationwide. For me, the people I work with, I think what they would maybe be open to is that they're going to take like the Dallas area of Texas, and the other firm would take like the Houston area. So kind of split the state north and south, and all the leads go into a call center, and they have their zip codes or counties mapped out like that. Because if you have a local office in Houston, and then the other firm has one in Dallas, they're going to convert at a higher level. So I can see something like that. It is interesting. It's like you always learn something new from these. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I do think that there's more money in legal than ever before. And it's not just the big boxes. I think all of us have seen venture capital money come in. I have a client, I won't name them, but they're in Nebraska and they've had an amazing presence forever. And they said they saw this new law firm just come out of nowhere and was everywhere. And
Yeah.
there was no explanation for it. The theory on that is there's probably some VC money behind that firm and they're able to do more advertising. So whether you're having to team up with somebody else or just have to be smarter in your marketing, which is really where I want to pivot to next. So, if there's a lawyer listening to this, you might be in one of two situations. One is, how do I break into my market? How do I use my marketing dollars the best that I can? Because every single dollar counts. And then on the other side of that coin, it would be, all right, where's the law firm that's got a really good foothold, but they've kind of plateaued? What's next? Because I believe, and I'll just use a quick example here, I always think that, SEO or maybe even a PPC campaign is a really good way to get people in the door.
Mhm.
When it's working, it's some of your lowest cost leads. But where do you go from there? Do you jump into social media because you've heard a lot about it, or do you really understand it? So, Megan, if you don't mind me starting with you this time, if you're talking with the law firm, and I know you focus a lot on the PR marketing side of a firm, are there places on both sides of that coin that you could suggest people to start?
Yeah, I mean, that's like the $1,000,000 question. Like how much money should you spend on your marketing and where should you spend it? And it's kind of the age-old conundrum that keeps all the business owners up at night, right? I think where you begin in terms of determining this, it goes back to some of the basic principles, right? Which is like, what are you trying to achieve? Like maybe it's, you really want to dominate your regional area. Okay, so then let's not try to do a national campaign, which is going to just bleed you for dry, right? So are you just trying to net as many leads as you possibly can, right? Each objective is going to have such a specific approach and specific allocation of resources. You also have to understand industry standards. There's so much money in legal marketing, and there's these giants like Morgan and Morgan who've entered other states like California. And it's just completely changed almost in an instant what law firms have to spend, particularly in California or other markets, right? And so your benchmarks have to change a lot. That's the evolution of your marketing that I talked about. A lot of people think you need to etch things in stone, but really they change. And if you're competing in an area that you can't compete in, right? Like Morgan and Morgan is dumping a ton of money online, and it's just trimmed the fat, right? Like people have completely exited their online marketing because of that. They cannot compete, right? So those things need to be considered. I think there's a lot of one of the big kind of overlooked strategies I see is like how you market by generation, right? So like sometimes you can really pinpoint like who you're trying to get in front of. PI can be a little bit difficult because a lot of times it's just like the world. But if you can drill down in like that's the critical piece to effective marketing. If you could kind of drill down like who you're trying to get in front of, that's going to help point you in the right direction of like what channels, what's the messaging, and keeping the backdrop of the industry standards. Like what can you really compete with?
Yeah, I think that's great observations and really trying to hone in on your audience or even a niche. I think that's one of the words that scares law firms the most is when you say niche down. Well, what do you
Right.
mean I'm only going to focus on this one area of practice? It doesn't mean you would reject other cases, but where those dollars are spent, I think is really important, especially if you're on the lower side of the curve, meaning you're really trying to break in. Everybody's going to get their certain amount of referrals, but there's a There's a number of cases in every practice area that are up for grabs every month. Who's going to get them?
Yeah.
So,
And
sorry,
I'll
go
just
ahead.
add one more thing, just another thought that came to it. You really want to think of, again, back to the basics. You want to think about the peso model, right? Paid media, earned media, shared media, and owned media, right? So there's also ways that, like, okay, maybe you can't compete in the paid media part, but you can dominate on the earned media. So I think that's important in terms of where you put your emphasis.
Absolutely. Colleen, thoughts?
Yeah, just to kind of echo what Megan was saying, I think that focus is so important. And it's hard to two things, focus and consistency. And I know, Eric, you guys are so good at consistency and it pays off and it matters. So you need to sit down, like Megan was saying, and say, okay, this is my goal. I'm going to focus on this one goal and I'm going to consistently deliver. Once you nail that, then you can move to the next. So whether that's paid media, right? Okay. What is the message? Who are we trying to reach? Stop trying to kind of throw things at the wall and see what sticks. If you just say, hey, listen, let me focus on one thing. Let me nail PPC. Maybe a little difficult in Los Angeles for car accident, but just pick the one lane, become a master in it, and then say, okay, great. But also be willing to pivot when things are not moving. Because in marketing, things either happen or they don't, and you have to know when to cut the plug.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah. I think, we work with, I think the only people that are worse business people than lawyers are doctors. They're brilliant at practicing law, but they have become so engrossed in practicing law that they don't monitor things. So I think, my mentality for the last probably 10 years has been to don't even talk about marketing. I want to talk about how's your conversion? How's your staff? Who converts better? What's your fall off? And then what's your fall off after you get back medical records and all these things? I know it doesn't apply to every area of law, but who's setting up appointments that cancel at a 50% rate versus a 75 or 80 rate? And are they setting the wrong expectations? And so once you kind of make sure they're efficient, because if you go to them with marketing and they have an inefficient system, which, a lot of them do, then you're going to be the one that always gets blamed. And there's bad marketers out there. There's actually a lot of them. Camp Lejeune kind of exposed a lot and brought a lot more in. But then once you kind of get that baseline, then you kind of figure out what are their goals? What are they looking to do? What's the low hanging fruit? Just like with Megan with the PR aspect, you can do a lot of things like scholarships, bicycle helmet giveaways, book bag giveaways, and charities in your community to really increase your reputation management, which, like Megan and Colleen are probably much better at that than I am. And then, are their goals realistic? Make sure they have realistic goals. Like, what are you looking to do? You want to crawl before you walk, and definitely walk before you run. And so just making sure you have that strategy and everyone buys into it. And so you don't want someone that wasn't part of the discussion when we all talked about for $500 a month, you're going to get this.
Yeah.
And it may take a while to get there. So I just think there's a lot of things you can do, because what Colleen and Megan said, those are all great things, but I think we set ourselves up as marketers for failure sometimes because everyone buys into it. Then you find out they're converting your stuff at 10%, where every other one of your clients are converting at 25, 35%.
Yeah, those are all good points. And I do want to touch on the efficiency of law firms and the next segment here. But just to kind of recap this, the way I look at it, if you're a law firm out there and you got to a point where you've got X amount of marketing dollars and every one of those dollars is important to you, you need to do something that is extremely measurable and extremely focused, because you can't afford to run in the wrong direction too long, because every dollar that's spent in most cases is going to be a sunk cost and you're not going to be able to recover that. Not to sell anybody on anything here, but some of those things would be buying quality leads or doing some type of a paid program that can be ramped up and measured down to the minute detail of that. And then what we'll get in the next segment is how you're responsible for that. So the days of you just buying a yellow page ad for 50 grand and then seeing your rep again a year later and just getting another double truck ad are over. If you're not personally involved in your own marketing, if you're not telling your company, your providers exactly what you want, or trying to find new niches within your market. For example, there's been an absolute explosion in e-bikes over the last few years. In my neighborhood, there are kids between the ages of 12 and 15, and they're like fireflies all over the place. Unfortunately, that proliferation in e-bikes is going to lead to a lot more accidents. So become the expert in that. I was just on a seminar the other day about Spanish speaking clients. And one of the biggest points that I took from it was you don't have to be a Spanish speaker to target that market. It may be less expensive for you to break into, and those cases will be worth just as much to you as an English speaking case. And then just to wrap up on the other side of that coin, maybe you've plateaued. Maybe you have a great, robust marketing campaign. You're crushing it with SEO and you've got all kinds of things in place. Well, what's next? How do you break out of that? There are things that you can attribute to new cases with branding, but I would never start there because branding takes months and months, if not years. And in those cases, social media can be used. And I also think OTT or streaming ads can be used because it can be hyper targeted. And the one thing I'd say, I mean, we don't do OTT, so I'm not trying to sell anybody on this, but that person is going to be made aware of your law firm. And when they do a Google search or when they're on social media, that brand recognition cannot be overstated. Kellogg's, Coca-Cola, Nike do not spend billions of dollars on this branding because it doesn't work. It's not for a tax write-off. So anybody want to add anything before we move on to the next segment?
I get that branding's important. At lawyer.com that we got very, we started off very small, right? 2 people in a room, but we had this powerhouse brand that we were able to build into. And just having that domain alone allowed us such a head start. So I think when you talk about branding, you got to kind of find out what it is and lean in on that for sure.
And I'll just add on the lean in part. I mean, we just see on the branding side, paralysis by analysis. Like sometimes it's just like you got to lean in and go for, a lot of times firms will hold off on the branding element because they feel like they've got to find the perfect brand, the perfect messaging. And that can be really debilitating to a law firm.
Yeah. So the second part of the pipeline is once you start doing your marketing would be your intake and follow up. I do think most law firms have a big blind spot in this area and they don't think they do, but you call their office and you get put on hold or you go through this, automated hell where you're just push this button for this and that button for that. And if I was the next $1 million client, or divorce client or estate planning client, I'm probably going to go to the next person on the list. Brian, I know you've got a lot of experience in this and there's so many links in this chain of intake and, there's lots of tools out there now for people to be helped with that. But, what are your thoughts on that or any stories you've seen recently?
Intake is the most important part. I think it's where a lot of people fail. It's where a lot of marketers get blamed, but you got to treat these people like your problem's our problem and give them realistic expectations. And we'll get into it later, but like there's a lot of these bad players on, if you go on Facebook and see the case connects and the cases on demand and the pinpoints where people are promised these checks for 6 figures for a minor accident, you get a check. You have to not only answer them warmly, be compassionate, but also be realistic about what the next steps are. Even putting pages on your website, the timeline, what are some of the obstacles? Get them, make them feel like they're part of the process and obviously making sure, at least in the injury world, we can't do anything until we're going to work on this, but we can't do anything as far as settlements or negotiation until you're healed and cleared by your doctors. People don't know that. There was one of my clients lost a good lead because the person didn't explain UIM properly. It made it sound like he was suing himself when he's paying for this policy and the other person was uninsured. And so you're just going to use your UIM policy. It costs them nothing. But I think making sure you give realistic expectations, you keep them in the communication. Even if you have no updates, check in on them, see how they're doing. How's their recovery? Keep them in the fold because they're going to see these ads. This is why I know Colleen, Eric, and Megan have seen these dual reps have just quadrupled. A lot of it because of AFFF and Camp Lejeune, because people see, oh, wow, this injury is worth 1.5 million to 2.5 million on Facebook. So I'm going to fire my lawyer and going to go to this lawyer. So like I said, it's start from finish. It doesn't end until you settle that. And even afterwards, you should, with the PR aspect, you should be keeping in communication and saying, hey, I know we helped you out for a car accident. Did you know Zantac is being recalled? Or there's all these other things you can educate and obviously bring in those referrals. So
Yeah. And there's no better way to earn a 1-star review than to have bad communication with your clients. And we know that reviews matter now.
The team matters. You need to have a team that's fully trained in intake. They have to understand that the consumer is calling on the worst day of their life, most likely, right? Unless I guess you won the lotto or something. So you're getting the person on their worst day. And when you pick up and say, hello, law firm, how can I help you? That matters. How you say it matters. We do a lot of call audits, and we were listening to a call once, and a woman was calling in because her son was taking out the trash, and his arm got pinned between the trash can and the garbage vehicle. The intake person said, which arm? And it's small things like that. Instead of saying, Susie, I'm so sorry to hear about John. I really think that Attorney Smith will be able to help you. Let me ask a few questions so that I can better help. Having a team that is trained and understands is paramount.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the real world examples because
Yeah.
when you hear them, you just know it's obvious how wrong it is, but people don't think about that. I've listened in on conversations where people are running mass torts and you'd say the attorney was in Indiana and somebody called from Wisconsin and the person answered the phone. Oh, we don't handle cases in Wisconsin.
Right.
Hangs up on what could have been a great lead. Megan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Brian and Colleen said. I mean, obviously, the intake department is really critical. And what Brian said about like oftentimes law firms are pointing to marketing when the problem is actually intake. That's a common issue we see all the time. A long time ago, people used to think of their front desk as such a key position. When people would actually walk in the office, that person, that greeter, that front desk person is such a critical person. And you have to think about that as the same way as your intake, right? Like you don't get a second chance at a first impression. And these people are going to pick up the phone and call the next law firm that's going to treat them a lot better within seconds, right? Like this is not even a day or two. I'll also say, just to Brian's point about like law firm owners or managing partners, they're lawyers first, and they sometimes, miss some of the really key business operations. And one of the things that just is always, they don't have a sales cycle. They don't have like a proper sales cycle. What's first, what's second, and having the team in place, the right people in the right seats to move that lead through the sales cycle, not only seamlessly, so that, they can come back as a reoccurring client or refer you to another client or leave a 5-star Google review, right? And so what happens is a lot of times we're seeing, okay, the intake department is really great. And they worked years on getting the intake, but then they are failing at the second, third, fourth sales cycle. So it's like there's a breakdown in so many places. And I just really encourage law firms to look at the whole journey from start to finish, from the day they answer the call to the day they're closing the case, giving them the check and saying, thanks so much for choosing us.
Yeah, all great points. And what I'd say is that first touch points, which everybody has commented on, you have to have a live person, whether you're outsourcing it. And the big suggestion, if you are large enough, the person who answers the phone for new potential clients, that has to be their job. If that's their fifth job, if that's the fifth hat that they're wearing, that phone is an annoyance to them and it shows through on their voice. Law firm, you know, that's
Mhm.
not how you want your new potential client to be welcomed. And I mean, we're kind of dumping on lawyers here as far as business, but they need to take ownership of this process. They have to be involved. This has to be top down. The most important thing is when that click to chat comes in, when that phone call comes in, and that needs to be an immediate response. And the other thing that I think Brian really outlined really well is that journey. Those first initial hours or days are important because everybody has had buyer's remorse. You bought a car, you bought a whatever it was, should I have spent that? Colleen mentioned this is probably the most important or stressful decision in their life. They're hiring an attorney because they want to feel like they made that right decision right away. So take them through that journey, make them feel like they made the right decision and hired the right firm. So anything to button that up before we move on to the next topic here?
You
I
nailed
would
Okay.
it.
say I would say there's a couple of things. Erica reminded me when we were at the well, it starts with an F, but it was kind of a four-letter word to work there.
Yeah.
The one good thing they did is they brought in Google. This was years ago. They told us that law firms on average spend 100 for every $100 they spend on marketing, they only spend $1 to convert, which is crazy. You're going to spend all this money to get these people to your doorstep, but then you don't spend money for quality intake, for cadences. Have someone build cadences for you. So
Yeah.
once they're in the system, to keep them to either verdict or settlement. So I'm not going to reiterate that, but I thought that was an important thing that Google says, like, you got to spend money to convert this stuff and keep them in the fold.
I'll finish this segment on just one other quick story because I think it's entertaining. But was working with a client and, we record their phone calls. One of our account managers was listening to the calls and the person answering the phone said, "Are you calling for firm A or firm B?" Both of these law firms, this personal injury, they're both in the same building. They compete with each other, but they're friends. Now imagine this. If you were referred to firm A, you're going to say firm A. But if you did a Google search, you might just say firm B because you don't know who you were calling. So we played that recording back to them and the little fire was started under them and, they fixed things. But those are the types of things that happen if you're not taking ownership. This is your law firm. You're responsible. And a 10% or 4% increase in conversions for you is going to make a massive difference. So with that, we'll jump into the final topic of today, which is everybody's overused term right now, which is AI. This is something that we've all heard about. I do believe there's some really cool benefits and advantages of it, but I also think people could be smokescreened by some of this stuff. So I'm just interested in everybody's opinion on artificial intelligence, how it can be used. Have you heard of good ways to use it? Are you currently using it yourself for any beneficial ways? So we'll finish at the beginning. Colleen, back to you.
Sure. So we live and die by AI here. You name it, we're using it. We've been early adopters. We put our developers full on AI about 2 years ago saying, "Hey, let's go. This is not a race. This is a sprint and we're not getting left behind." Personally, I use AI all the time. For me personally, I use it a lot for content. I always talk about that flashing cursor when you have writer's block that's like taunting you, like, you don't know what to say. You don't know what to say. But I do because I go to ChatGPT. I'm like, I don't know what to say. Can you help me? And boom, within seconds, I have information and I can go. We see AI is a great tool for content. We see AI as a great tool for research. We are all about AI as long as you have your guardrails, right? We talk about wearing a bike helmet. Whenever you're using AI, you really have to understand the parameters, have to understand what you're using and output of what you're using it for. I know Lexis AI Plus has a really great program for lawyers that will help with research. And you can ask questions inside the kind of like create a prompt to ask a question inside the software, which will save you a lot of time. There's tons and tons of AI programs out there. Our best suggestion is try every single one of them and see what works for you. They have coupon codes, they have discounts, they give you free trials. Try it all and see what works for your practice area. But huge AI fans, can't say enough.
Absolutely. And speaking of AI, for those who haven't noticed yet, Brian Vogel is actually an AI bot. We're working on that uncanny valley. He's doing great so far. But Brian, your thoughts on AI and how people can use it?
I would say use with caution. It's a scary thing in the legal industry. I use AI. I use Chat GPT. I actually pay for the higher one. I think there's value to it. So I don't want to diminish what Colleen and what Megan's probably going to say, but I think you have to be careful with some aspects of it when it comes to your legal process, because the ramifications for doing something at a cosmetic dental office is going to be a lot less stringent than if you do something with cases and working up cases and discovery. So just make sure, like, if you use it responsibly, you have it help you write it, but then you edit everything of it because there's so much stuff in there. So use with caution, but I definitely believe in it. I think there's a purpose for it. And I think in the next probably 3 to 5 years, you're going to have some real trustworthy options to help with writing briefs and those things, where it's a little less having to read every single word of it.
Absolutely. Megan?
I agree with everything that Brian and Colleen said. We mostly use it for writing, research, organization, kind of truncating things that used to take a lot more time, even like summaries of calls, right? Your AI note taker can just shoot out a summary with some action items and it saves you that hour of going through your notes or the transcript. So it's really helpful. And I'm a big champion of AI. You've got to have a human hand on the wheel, just like what Colleen and Brian said. There's nothing worse than when I see an AI written blog or an AI written email. It's so blatant. And I know, Eric, you could probably talk about this more than I can, but Google sees that too, right? They're Google's aware of what's written by AI and what's not. And that's going to impact people who are just kind of blindly using it. I think a lot of people sort of fall on the side of like they see it as a threat. And then the other side is like they see it as an opportunity. I think it's both, right? I think with anything, with we were here however many years ago with social media where it was like, oh no, this isn't going to do anything. It isn't going to impact anything. And it's like, it does, it will. And in 5 years, it's going to just be part of everyone's daily life, not just, maybe the folks on this call.
Yeah. And again, I agree with everything everybody said. I like it, and I think attorneys can use it for topics, finding topics on social media. It's great if you want to do research on your competitors, find out what they're mentioning in their pages, what topics they have. And normally, if I ask for 10 topics, 2 or 3 of them are really great ones that I wouldn't have thought of. But the human involvement, at least at this point, who knows 2 or 5 years from now, where it's going to be. But I heard a great analogy. Well, it wasn't even an analogy, but it was in practice. They're using AI to look at MRI scans. Now, the AI instantaneously can find 3 or 4 spots to look at, but you have to have a person look at those 4 spots to see what's really going on there. And what they're saying is this one person can now be 4 or 5 times more efficient. And that's the same thing, at your firm, whether you're looking for social media topics or writing content. And then the last thing I'd say on this is AI is not going away. So if you're making a hire, let's just say you're hiring a junior person, hire someone who's passionate about it. They don't have to be an expert in it, but really, really passionate about it. And then it's amazing. I see some of the stuff that our company's doing and some of the ideas that people come up with, and I'm blown away. I'm like, oh my God, I would have never thought of that. So my last tip would be that if you're looking to make a hire for someone, get someone who really enjoys that topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's really all we had to cover today. If you've got anything coming up in the next couple of weeks or month where they can meet you in person or reach out virtually. So we'll start. Brian, if you want to kick us off here.
Yeah, I'm not going to any conferences the rest of the year, so I'm super excited about that. There's just way too many conferences with the same people telling you to do the same things. But I will say I'm in the process of building a group of people to help with the responsible marketing. There is an enormous issue with our industry in the legal vertical where people are just these case connects and these pinpoints. I know there's more of them out there, but just causing unreasonable expectations. Eric, I've been doing this for 2 decades, and none of my family knew what I did until they saw the Camp Lejeune ads. And one of them was my nephew, who is a sophomore at Ohio State. He was at Camp Lejeune. I think that's something I would love to. I think we should do another podcast about. And then I own a company called Multi Focal Legal Marketing Consulting, and it's designed to simply help them do data diving, looking at each lead, dispositions, and getting feedback early. I think Megan and Colleen would agree, and yourself, if there's something good or bad, tell us. We're not going to raise your prices. We can put a bigger gauge needle on it. If it's really good, if it's bad, then we can find the sources and get rid of those sources. Everyone's using affiliates right now. To do any kind of volume, you have to use affiliates. It's not a bad word, but you got to know what they're doing. And so the more you data dive and have someone, you almost see a data scientist at your law firm, honestly, somebody that can interpret data, whether that's a CMO or a chief data officer, having someone that can analyze the data so you can go practice law or run the business.
Thanks, Brian. Megan.
So One thing I'll just let listeners know is we've got a webinar coming up, complimentary webinar, all about exploring Substack and should your firm use that. So Substack is kind of you almost hear it as often as AI, and should your firm be leveraging it? So that's on September 26th at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Complimentary. You can go on Berbay's website, Berbay, register, and we push out a ton of thought leadership content all about legal marketing.
Thank you. And Colleen.
All right, Brian, earmuffs on this one. We are actually hosting our own conference in the fall. And we are going to be talking 2 days where we're going to be talking about topics like this. How can you use AI to grow your firm? Like Megan said, what are thought leaders saying in the community? What is the future of law? So we are putting on the Lawyer Growth Summit October in Las Vegas at the Fontainebleau, and you can learn more at lawyergrowthsummit.com.
Awesome. And we'll have all this in the show notes. All I'd like to say is we're going to be doing a series of these. The next one is on, and Brian actually kind of alluded to it, would be the C-suite, fractional people that you can hire. So fractional CEO, fractional COO, fractional CMO, and then the new one that Brian made up, a CDO, I think. We might even add that. So be on the lookout for that. And if anybody has any ideas for topics that they'd like us to cover, please let us know and we'd be happy to share it with you.